This is Embodied from PRX and WUNC. I'm Anita Rao. As an undocumented woman in her 20s, Maria Lopez's dating life was complicated by more than just the usual stuff.
I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to pursue a career that I want. And unfortunately, in this system, it's with this number. So I knew that if anything became serious, it had to be with someone that can provide that.
Today on Embodied, one woman's search for both love and legal status, and why she created a humorous Instagram account to process her experience.
I decided to make fun of this system that keeps us, struggling, even like in the most vulnerable parts of ourselves. And people connected with my jokes and my memes.
Dating while undocumented, just ahead on Embodied. When Maria Lopez was 6 years old, her grandmother pulled her aside for a conversation about marriage.
She would talk to me about marrying someone with papeles. She wanted me to have this goal in the future to marry someone for status.
Maria was undocumented, but young enough that she still didn't really know what that meant.
I didn't understand what she obviously knew and understood. I just kind of always thought, oh, grandma's saying something silly.
As Maria grew up and started pursuing relationships of her own, she began to comprehend the weight of her grandmother's advice. As a young woman without permanent legal status, there was an ever-present tension for her to navigate between finding love and finding papers. This is Embodied, our show about sex, relationships, and health. I'm Anita Rao. In her 20s, Maria started talking openly about this tension between love and papers on Instagram. Her account is Y Tiene Papeles, which means, and does he have papers? She's drawn in a community of more than 5,000 followers with her honest and often humorous takes on romance and legal status. She also shares a lot of herself on the account, of her long and short relationships, and of her experience as a recipient of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA. But the story of how Maria started this community and where she's ended up in her search for romance begins with her family's relocation to the U.S. from Mexico. It was 1999, and Maria was just about to turn 5 years old. Her family traveled to California, but her memories of the trip are foggy, as was her understanding of her family's immigration status.
My parents convinced me to accept the journey over here by telling me that we were going to go to Disneyland.
Oh.
And this is a common thing. That was really all that was in my head as a 4-year-old. I obviously knew I wasn't born in California in the U.S., but there wasn't never a conversation with my parents until maybe I was high school age and trying to figure out driver's license and college. So I didn't have any understanding of what being undocumented meant until I was maybe 16.
Oh, wow. How and when did that awareness really sink in?
It really sank in when I tried applying for colleges and financial aid. And the counselors in my high school didn't really know what to do with my situation. I remember for FAFSA, which is, the federal financial aid, they were asking for a social security number and a proof of legal residency, or citizenship. And I knew I wasn't a citizen. And I called my mom because I was in like a workshop for students. And like she didn't really know how to respond to me, saying like, well, you are a resident of California. And I think she was trying to be as protective as possible, but the counselor understood that, I wasn't a legal permanent resident. I wasn't a citizen. I didn't have a social security number. And that was kind of where everything just shifted for me.
You were getting into your first really serious relationship also at that time. How and when did you talk to your boyfriend about this realization and this shift?
I think it wasn't such a big deal at the time. It was just like a matter of fact. At that time, I wasn't thinking at all, like at all about marriage, about how I needed to adjust somehow. It just didn't seem like such a big deal as it kind of turned as I grew older and saw more of how this number that is assigned to you could be like the barrier to so many resources and so many opportunities.
His parents were also immigrants, right? So I'm curious about like did you guys talk at all about the difference between your experience and his?
Yeah, because we would talk about just his Americanization.
Because he had legal status in the US.
Correct. He was a US born citizen, and because his parents weren't documented for so long, he never got to go to Mexico, experience his culture out there or his family. So we would often do it kind of as a joke where I would make fun of him lacking that Mexican side to him.
So, about a year into your relationship, you did receive the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, the program created under the Obama administration designed to protect some young adults brought to the U.S. as children from deportation, offered some temporary work authorization. How did getting DACA change your thoughts about romance, dating, kind of where you were in your life at that point?
I always received like these messages from my dad as well about, studying and going to college, getting a degree, having a career, to never depend on a man. So to me, DACA was almost like I can continue doing that. It had me like seeing a possibility of adjusting without necessarily having to get married to do that.
And you're using the word adjusting, and can you just explain what you mean when you use that phrase?
Adjusting meaning being able to apply for legal permanent residency.
Uh-huh.
That's never been part of DACA, but because of how immigration law was shifting, I think that was the hope. Like the good immigrant narrative, go to school, get a degree. I remember listening to that a lot from my dad saying, if you have a degree, maybe they'll grant you eventually. But that never, like, merit was never a door to adjustment of status. I think when I was going to my my late 20s, my parents were kind of like, well, it didn't work with DACA. They're not going to grant you, a pathway to legalization. It's not going to happen because you have all these degrees or education. So, last resort, like, when is it going to happen? When are you going to get married?
So I want to go back in time a little bit to you and this high school boyfriend. The two of you stayed together for 6 years. You went to college, you started a job, and then in November 2016, President Trump got elected. And you have shared before that things really started to shift in your relationship. Tell me about what changed.
I got to take advantage of a program called Advanced Parole. And with DACA, I was able to apply and be granted like an exit and return. It's a travel document, and I got to visit my home country, my family that I hadn't seen in since 1999 to 2016.
Hmm.
And I came back with like this urge and just this unexplored feeling of the world is so much bigger. There's so much more meaning to this life than to just, be caged.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I had these expectations of, okay, well, we've been dating for a long time. I'm graduating college soon. Um, kind of looking to him like, what's your plan?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's next for us? And I think it was a lot for him, maybe for me to have that shift. And we tried to continue the relationship. We tried moving in together and doing all that. But at the end, like I had a goal and it didn't align with his.
What was your goal?
My goal was to adjust status through marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't see the possibility any other way. I think that if your partner cares about you, your safety is a concern of theirs. And I did not feel safe with the new administration, Trump's first term. And I felt like if you cared about me, this would be also your one of your goals is to have me safe in this country. And that just wasn't a reality.
What happened when you asked him about marriage? When you kind of put the facts to him, like we've been together for 6 years, like I see this as our future. What did he say?
He said he wanted to wait until he was 25 for some reason. We
Okay.
were, I think, 23 at the time. And it gave me uncommitted. I felt
Yeah.
like we've already committed so much time, and you're just not seeing this with the severity that I'm seeing it. So his reasoning didn't make sense. And also it became really like a guilt trip because he would tell me things like, well, this is what you're using me for, then I don't want to be part of it. It just became very manipulative and it went dark
Hmm.
really quickly. I felt like maybe if I met you last month and I'm asking you to marry me, maybe you can say something like, oh, you're using me for this. But we've been committed to each other for 6 years. I don't think I'm asking for anything out of this world.
Just ahead, what it was like for Maria to start dating as a young, undocumented woman in her 20s. You're listening to Embodied from North Carolina Public Radio, a broadcast service of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. You can also hear Embodied as a podcast. Follow and subscribe on your platform of choice. We'll be right back. This is Embodied. I'm Anita Rao. We're talking about the search for love and legal status with Maria Lopez. When she was a teenager, Maria became part of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. DACA gave her protected status from deportation and permission to work legally, but not long-term stability. So when she was in her early 20s, Maria started talking to her boyfriend of 6 years about marriage. When President Trump threatened to end the DACA program, the conversations became more urgent. Overall, those talks didn't go well. Her boyfriend said he wanted to wait longer before getting married and asked if she was using him for citizenship. Maria eventually ended the relationship. Over the next couple of years, she was working through some big feelings about her search for both love and permanent legal status. And to process it all, she created an Instagram account called Y Tiene Papeles, which means, and does he have papers?
So for some time, I think I was tapping out of long-term or serious relationships because I was so young when I entered that relationship and I wanted to explore dating through as little commitment as possible.
Yeah, being in your early 20s. It's a fun time.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a fun time and I wanted to have that experience. So, yeah, I kind of checked out of the whole serious relationship thing. But then I also understood that if there was something that eventually, turned into something serious, I did have this in mind. Like in the long run, I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to see my family. I want to be able to continue going to school or pursue a career that I want. And unfortunately, in this system, it's with this number
Yeah.
and this permission, right? Like this legal permission to exist. So I knew that if anything became serious, it had to be with someone that can provide that.
You still had DACA, but kind of at that moment, President Trump was moving to end the program. There was a lot of uncertainty about if or how it would continue. So you're saying that was affecting kind of your thoughts about needing a long-term partner.
Correct. Yeah.
So you were shifting kind of in a lot of ways, but you were also exploring aspects of your identity that you hadn't been able to explore because you were in a long-term relationship. So you were kind of having this like sexual revolution on one hand, and then on the other hand, like really processing this big life change, this end of a 6-year relationship. And in this period, you started an Instagram page that you called Y Tiene Papeles, which means, and does he have papers? Tell me about what you wanted to explore with this account. Like, where were you in your search at that moment?
I always tell people that this page started from a sad girl page, a sad girl
Okay.
moment, because it was a big shift at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I would post really serious, like sad poems. And then I started making fun of the situation because I felt like if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Mm-hmm.
And I got interviewed by LA Times. And that's when like people really started finding me. I think the title of that article was Love in the Era of DACA. And I talked about all this and just how I decided to make fun of this system that keeps us, struggling in not just like a political aspect, but even like in the most vulnerable parts of ourselves. And people found me and people connected with my jokes and my memes. I would talk about really, I guess to some folks it's like taboo topics,
Mm-hmm.
but because I saw folks just connecting to it and a lot of undocumented women connecting to it, I felt like, okay, I'm not the only one. There's so many of us out there struggling with the same issue.
So much of your early content is, yeah, you say it's sad girl, but you were also really funny from the beginning. Like, I think your third or fourth post is like a meme that says, unlike DACA, my love for you is permanent. Like, it's funny. It's funny even when you were in your sad girl phase.
In my sad girl era.
Yeah. Like, how did you mentioned that like these other undocumented women were drawn to this community? What are some of the things that you started to hear that felt really resonant for you? Like that other people were also experiencing dating while undocumented?
I started receiving messages about women also adding that checkbox of like citizen or not
Mm,
to their search for a partner. The also the experiences of not being able to share their status with their partner because the fear of them thinking that's what they are using them for, to get out of this immigration status. And then I also heard this guy I was dating is a Trump supporter.
mm.
And how do I deal with that? How do I go about this? Is it fair to end the relationship or end it because of this?
So, how were you approaching disclosing your status when you were dating at this time?
I'm I think just naturally funny and like a joker. So I would ask about travel.
Uh huh.
And I was also fishing for information about whether they can leave and come back, because they're citizens or at least legal permanent residents, right? So I would ask about travel, and if they would tell me, oh, yeah, I just went to, Mexico last year. Oh, and they would usually ask me like where I have been. And I would say something like, oh, I haven't, been able to leave, or I guess I can leave, but I can't come back. And that's how I would kind of
Mm.
break the ice on that. And then they would ask, if they're really clueless, like they have no idea, they would ask, "Oh, how come?" And it would be like an educational opportunity. But if not, if they're familiar somehow of those, like, of other people that in their lives, they would say, "Oh, wow, like, when did you come here?" Like, the conversation would go a different way.
Did anyone ever end things with you because you disclosed that you were undocumented?
No, that it was never my experience with anyone.
When someone disclosed to you that they were undocumented, how did you respond?
I would respond like, "Wow, we have something in common."
Mhm.
I would never shame somebody over that, but it was more of, again, like me just being funny or goofy about it. It would always just be like, "Well, this won't work." you know? Like, I can't help you and you can't help me, but we can trauma bond, you know?
Would you
So,
really say that out loud, all of that?
yeah, I would say we can connect over this, like, shared experience and trauma, but realistically, like, this will not go very far.
How would they respond?
I think a few men were really bummed about it, but others would also laugh because, again, like I said, if you don't laugh about it, you'll cry. And then I had, like, the experience of them trying to change my mind, even though I was very honest and clear. That was one of the dating lessons that I held very, like, strictly, was honesty.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna be very honest, like, because of our statuses, it won't go very far.
Did you have any grief about having to end relationships because of that reason?
Yeah, I did. There was, like, really good guys,
Mhm.
you know? Like, pretty much checked all the boxes. And it was this one thing that I knew was a big thing for me, but I would tell him, like, "You're an amazing person, you're gonna find, the right person for you. It's just that this one part is important to me."
How were you weighing in your mind at that juncture the desire for love and connection versus this real need for status and security?
I just felt like it wasn't impossible to find both.
Mhm.
Although it was challenging for sure, and speaking to, like, the women that follow me too, like, it is very rare to find both, because in one hand you have the connection with other undocumented people. You have that connection, that shared experience. You talk about, finding out when you were undocumented, like how that impacts your life, all of that. But then you don't have this status, that could eventually lead to more opportunities. And on the other hand, you're also looking for love, or for, like, emotional connection. And it's always this one little thing of this number, or this, like, legal, I say, the permission to exist.
Mm.
And it was hard. That was really, really challenging to navigate.
We talked earlier about your grandmother planting the seed really early in life for you to get married, to get papers. And at that juncture, kind of after your long term relationship, when you were on the dating scene, you were the last undocumented of your siblings. So I'm curious about kind of what expectations you felt from your family at this point in your kind of early 20s when you weren't yet with someone permanently.
So, um, my mom was just, very, like, accepting of whatever decision I made. Like, I think towards the end of my 20s, she really didn't pressure me as much anymore. My dad was he's a little more strategic, I think. And he was thinking of like long term. He's thinking like, I want my daughter to travel because this was funny. My husband brings it up all the time. With me being undocumented, I traveled more than my US citizen siblings.
Wow.
So my mom had this joke. I don't know if there's like something similar in English, but she would tell me, por eso Dios no le da alas a los alacranes, which means kind of like it directly translates to this is why what is an alacran? I guess a scorpion, or
Uh-huh.
that's why they don't fly because they're dangerous. So basically, she's telling me that I'm limited in my status because I would go crazy. Like I would just hands off the rail. It would be too much almost, I think. So I say this because I traveled more without status than my siblings who had that privilege,
Hmm.
who have that privilege. And I think that also says a lot to my like determination and unwillingness to accept these rules that were like imposed upon people like me. So my dad saw me as like, you would appreciate that privilege a lot more than people that just have it.
Yeah.
So you got to get married to get it. That was his thinking, I think.
So, about 3 years after you were kind of getting back into dating, you were running this account and you took a road trip to San Diego. And beforehand, you had posted to your account asking for local recommendations. And one of your followers named Omar responded. Tell me about Omar and more about how you two met.
So, yes, Omar was my follower for a while. He followed me on my Instagram page since before I kind of made my face public. I was at the beginning very secretive, and I didn't know how having a page like that would impact, I don't know, like my job,
Mm-hmm.
anything. So I just didn't post myself very often. And so he was a follower of mine, and he is from Tijuana. And it's also very rare when men follow me because I do talk a lot. I hold men accountable. I like to
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah.
And he would interact with the page, and he would say things like, very like, men should be held accountable. Men should be taught lessons, and it's always women like teaching men, and it's unfair. Like, very, he hates being called a feminist, but that was the energy I was
Yeah. Active in the
receiving.
comment section.
Yes, exactly. So when I went to San Diego and I asked for recommendations, he told me, "Hey, I'm in Tijuana. I can show you some of the places I've mentioned to you in San Diego. I'm happy to, you know, show you some local spots versus the touristy stuff." And I was super open to meeting, folks from my page. So yeah, I was like, yeah, for sure. I'm down. And then that's how it kind of started. Like my friendship in real life with this person started.
So, what were some of the kind of early conversations the two of you had about immigration status and relationships? Like, he knew your story from following your page, but how did that kind of play out in conversations between you two?
Well, I learned more about him
Uh huh.
because obviously, like, he's not as open and public as I am, or as I was at the time. He knew my stories, and he knew my dating, even like my dating experiences, things that I would just talk very openly about on the page. But just even from that first meetup, I understood that he had access to Mexico and the US, like, and that he did it often. He's from Tijuana, so he would visit, his hometown often. And I learned a little bit of his, um, well, I actually kind of learned the entire the entire thing, like how he was undocumented.
Mm.
And he migrated at a later age, so at 17, which is also a whole different experience too. When he got to the US, his goal was to be able to go back, to have access to Tijuana again. Versus I think when someone's young and grows up here, it just becomes so normalized to not leave.
Yeah.
So I got to know a lot more about him, I think, because he already knew so much of me.
So he was undocumented when he came here, but by the time you two met, did he have citizenship?
Yeah, he was able to, like, his mom adjusted all her children by also getting married.
So that must have been really interesting for you to kind of have those, like you had dated people kind of on both sides of that experience, like folks who were undocumented, who you had kind of drawn a hard line of, I'm not going to date you. And then folks who maybe didn't understand your experience here is someone
Yeah,
who has both. What was that like?
it was beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it started as a friendship, like, off the bat. He was just a different type of man too, because he had a lot of, I think, conversations on, like, how dangerous it is for women to date. Like, he would tell me things like, I see my friends struggle all the time. They share their location with me to make sure that they're safe, things like that. But then I love that about him. And he also had the experience of being undocumented and he had way harsher realities to deal with than I did, because he's also 10 years older than I am. So he experienced being undocumented at, like, no DACA,
Mm.
no state financial aid. He worked in, like, as a farm worker. He had to find work, without this social security number. So it was also kind of me learning from his experiences too. So to me, it was like I just listened to him and understood that this was not your typical person that you meet.
Just ahead, a marriage proposal finally comes for Maria, but it brings up some unexpected feelings. We'll be right back.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.
This is Embodied. I'm Anita Rao. For Maria Lopez, dating has long been about two things: finding love and finding a pathway to permanent legal status. Maria is the creator of the Instagram page Y Tiene Papeles. It started as a place for her to process her experiences of dating while undocumented through both humor and real talk. It has since evolved into a community of folks who connect online and in real life to bond over being undocu-cuties. That's Maria's term. Maria met her now husband Omar through her Instagram page. He knew her story from her account, and they had important things in common. Omar had citizenship status when they met, but he shared with Maria that he too had been undocumented. Their friendship evolved into a romance, and it wasn't long before Omar and Maria started talking about marriage.
It was early on. I want to say like 4 months into or 5 months into the relationship.
Who brought it up?
He did. This was when it was Biden and Trump that were going to be.
Like the 2020 election?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And he saw this as a possibility for Trump to win again. So he brought up marriage. And I just thought, like, you're crazy. We just started dating like 5 months ago. I had known him for a few months more, obviously, but still, it just didn't feel like a fair thing to ask of him just
Mm.
yet. I also, so we were long distance for a long time, and I was also comfortable in that, like, I have my own space, you have your own space. We see each other often, but not daily.
So was he talking when he first talked to you about it, was he talking about it as like purely a logistical thing and y'all's relationship would evolve on its own course, like your romantic relationship? Or was he proposing like you're now going to build a life together? Or do you even have a sense of how that conversation or how he felt about that conversation?
It was very strategic. I
Uh-huh.
think that's what it was too. Like, I felt like I deserve the bells and whistles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I- yeah, I deserve the bells and whistles, and I'm not gonna. It almost felt like I was resisting as much as I could
Mm,
against this country forcing me into a marriage. Like, I was kind of navigating both
yeah.
ends of the spectrum. Like, yes, I need someone with status, with papers or citizenship, but I don't want to jump right into it either. If I am going to get married, I do want to love the person that I do that with. So it felt like too strategic, too cold, too like rushed, and I just wasn't going to go for it. And he also didn't pressure me. Like, he presented it as something that he was up for doing and something that he believed was necessary. And I'm like, thanks, but I'm okay waiting a little bit longer.
When did things shift for you of feeling like you did want to get engaged and you did want marriage to be on the table?
He surprised me. Like, we were at that point, it was, I think, 3 years into the relationship. And he's very good at thinking in the future. And it might be the age gap. I tell him, I don't know what it is, but I'm just going off vibes. And he's like, no, Trump is going to get elected again. Like, I can't risk. This is too much of a risk to
Mm.
like put you in danger. So we had talked about marriage again, throughout our relationship, but he proposed during a birthday trip we went to the US Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and he proposed in Puerto Rico. And it took me by surprise completely.
How in that moment were you thinking about this love y papeles question that had been on your mind for so long?
I felt like it existed.
Mm.
I found this wonderful person that I could identify with, that I could be honest about my status and my boundaries and my goals without feeling guilt or without feeling like that difference in power dynamic or them abusing that power dynamic, and that understood and wanted me to be safe and to have opportunities. So I think that when someone approaches it from a place of care,
Mm.
it hits different versus, oh, I'm going to be used. You're using me. And people in my following would tell me all the time, like, this is so hard to find, you don't even know.
I was going to ask about that. Like, how did the community respond when you shared this life update?
Very supportive. Just so much beautiful support and well wishes and excitement, because I did kind of bring my supporters through my journey,
Hmm.
like the entire journey. And some have been there since, 2019, and saw my crazy hot girl era, uh, single girl era, and saw me kind of go into, a committed relationship, and how wonderful he is and how I was able to connect with a lot. And he'll do like talks, because he's a professor. So he talks a lot about history and understanding how laws became laws in this country and how everything's connected and rooted in white supremacy. So people connected to him. So they were very, very supportive and happy for us.
So you two did get married in August of 2024, and you decided to adjust your status as soon as possible after getting married. And that is a process. It involves like a physical, all of this documentation, meeting with lawyers, an interview. What part of that was the most emotional for you and for the two of you as a couple?
We got married in August, but elections happened in November. And I think that was the most, I mean, it was a roller coaster of emotions. But I think that realizing, that he was right, that he knew that Trump would be elected again, and just kind of going through the heaviness of what that meant for our community was really draining.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had these, like, as I was adjusting, I had these, like, random depressive moments of I felt like I was betraying my community.
Hmm.
So I think those were the hardest. And thinking about my family, my parents, that was all like I would go through the motions in and out, and kind of reminding myself that my community wanted what was best for me in this time.
Yeah.
So my parents want the best for me because it was really only me thinking those things. No one outside was telling me this or, pointing the finger at me saying, like, you're a traitor. No, nothing. It was just all within me.
Yeah.
And I lived with it for so long that it almost felt like I was letting go of something that was part of me for so long. And even though it was awful in many, many ways, it um it allowed me to meet really amazing people.
Yeah. That's such a complicated series of emotions to weigh. This relief and joy for a change and a feeling of security for you after so long, but also, yeah, as you said, like wondering whether you're betraying a community or a part of your own identity that had been such a big part of your life. Did you talk about this with your husband?
Yeah, he didn't get it at all.
Yeah.
This was one of those things that we really disagreed with because to him it was like a sense of urgency, like we need to get this done. This is important. And also I see it from his experience too, right? He came into the country as a teenager, almost 18, and his goal the entire first few years he was here was to be able to go back and to have that freedom. And this was different for me. I carried this 26 years. And so we would often, I remember when, like, during the election, I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna go through with the adjustment. Like, I just became very, like, resistant. And he said, no, girl, we already got married. We're, like, filling out the paperwork. Like, this is important and you're just reacting out of emotion right now.
Where did the resistance come from?
I think I felt like if they were gonna kick out my parents, they were gonna take me
Hmm.
too.
Yeah.
So, or it felt like it was also very like if I just don't want to be part of this country anymore.
Yeah.
I have felt so rejected by this country, and it felt like I was accepting the rejection and like bowing down to to it.
So you did become a permanent legal resident this summer. You got your green card in the mail. Like, how have you been feeling since that moment?
A little, uh, what do they call it? Having an identity crisis?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because it's been so long, and a lot of my I felt like I put in a lot of my personality almost into this identity, this forced identity. So I'm having a little bit of a moment where I'm just quieter or processing. So yeah, identity crisis for
Yeah.
sure.
You have been holding space for this community for so long, people sharing their stories. You do a lot of like open calls for questions and giving advice. And I'm curious about like this particular moment where you still have this platform where you're talking about being undocumented and dating, you're telling stories, you're supporting other folks who are going through that. Like, what advice do you have right now for undocumented folks trying to date and find love, given everything that's happening with immigration and customs enforcement and this this moment?
I feel like I'm always split
Hmm.
because it's always, I want to encourage people to be strategic and intentional with their time and with their experiences, their dating experiences. But I'm also about each individual doing what makes them happy.
Yeah.
I had also met women who, just said, this isn't a priority to me. This doesn't make or break me. I'm going to date whoever makes me happy. And there's been, people who are in relationships and they're both undocumented or documented. So I also find that that's beautiful because you have made that decision for yourself and said, this country's not going to dictate how I love or how I find love. And I think that that's also very powerful and beautiful. Does that limit you? Absolutely. But does also on the opposite end, does it limit you? Yeah, probably. Probably on the other hand, you're maybe not meeting too many people who can connect with you in this sense. So, yeah, I just find myself kind of jumping between those two ends.
What do you hope to give to this community moving forward now that you're navigating this new position yourself, these mixed feelings about having legal status? Like, what are you still hoping to offer?
Laughter.
Uh
I think
huh.
that's what I've been offering. I'll tell folks, like, I'm not necessarily in a debate team and I'm not necessarily like rioting, but I will make you laugh. And I'm from a different perspective now, right? I definitely now understand that I'm there to be a voice
Hmm.
because there's so many folks that don't necessarily have the option to be loud. And I see my privilege and want to use it to the best of my ability to advocate as much, but also to make people laugh because I feel like that's what I've been praised for the most was like my humor is magic. And in really dark times, like this is the stuff that you don't necessarily think that people need. You think people need, oh, know your rights workshops and red cards and a meeting with an attorney to find their solutions. And you might not necessarily think of joy or laughter, but that is part of it too. So I've told people, do not let this system like rob you of your laughter and your joy because that's exactly how how they end up winning.
Maria, thank you so much for the conversation, all of your stories, and your humor. I so appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
You can find out more about Maria Lopez and her Instagram page, Y Tiene Papeles, at our website, embodywunc.org. Follow us on Instagram for behind the scenes and bonus content. Our handle is @embodiedwunc. Today's episode was produced by Kaya Finlay and edited by Amanda Magnus. Wilson Sayre also provided editorial assistance. Nina Scott is our intern, and Jenny Lawson, our technical director. Quilla wrote our theme music. This program is recorded at the American Tobacco Historic District. North Carolina Public Radio is a broadcast service of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I'm Anita Rao.